Oh my God. Fuck. Okay, we're gonna do it like this. We're gonna do it like this. We're gonna do it like this. There we go. Fuck out of here. Come on, man. All right. Finally. God damn. Man, this computer is giving me a hard time. Welcome back. Just wanted to kick back and have a little discussion today. My most recent video, live stream, was about Joe Rogan, and I've been motivated to elaborate after further review, examination, and acquiring some knowledge and information that I was not aware of before. And also, I was motivated to elaborate on this after this classless, idiotic statement from Israel Adesanya. My goodness. Now, if you have not heard it, I'm going to play it. And let's be clear. Israel is not a black American. He's not. So he does not speak for black people. Hell, he don't even speak for all Nigerian people. So I don't know why he said this, but listen to this.
Joe Rogan. And Dan, I had a question for you around Joe Rogan. There's been a lot of controversy with him.
First off, let me take this one. Hold up. I'm black. I can take this one. Look.
Okay. What were...
No. There's a lot of cunts in this game. There's a lot of snakes in this game. I've been in this fight game since 2008. And Joe Rogan is one of the nicest, coolest, humble motherfuckers I've had the pleasure of working with. Understand that. And you know, it's just, fuck the noise, man. You know what they're trying to do. You can't control the man, and he's got the biggest platform in the world right now. So that's my nigga, Joe Rogan. Fuck the noise.
Oh my goodness. Man, it would have been better had Israel just not said anything. Silence is the best option a lot of the times. He should have stayed silent and let Dana White deal with that. But I've been hearing this, or I've been seeing it. People been saying this. A lot of people been saying this that I wasn't aware of. A lot of black people been saying, oh, Joe Rogan's not racist. He's not racist. Listen, people, let's not get it twisted. Yes, he is. Joe Rogan, that's a big reason why he has such a massive platform. Joe Rogan is a bona fide, die-hard white supremacist. And it does not matter if he had black people on his show, this, that, and the third. You know, people confused racists. They think that all racists hate black people, that they always spew derogatory language at black people, that they're always and constantly saying negative things about black people, don't want to be around black people. That is the most outdated, idiotic, backwoods type of narrative that is out there. It is so primitive. That is a primitive understanding of human beings in general. Yes, Joe Rogan is a bona fide white supremacist. The thing is, like I said before, I assume that whites are racist and white supremacists before I even meet them. The only thing that will change my mind as if they somehow prove that they're not. In my mind, they're guilty until proven innocent. And the same thing goes for black people. Not in reverse, but I always assume that black people view themselves as naturally less intelligent than white people, than Asian people, and all other races. I always, and maybe it's wrong, maybe it's right, but that's just me. I personally assume that black people view themselves as naturally less intelligent than other groups. That is because this narrative of racism is something that gets pushed by the satanic media and entertainment industry. The Satanists, the racists, have always had more power than whites who are not racist. I don't know how that happened, but they've always had more power. And Joe Rogan is most definitely a white supremacist and a racist. But don't get it twisted. I don't care. I want to make the point that it doesn't bother me. Now, it would bother me if he were an MMA fighter who spewed racist rhetoric in the build-up to his fights against a non-white person. Then I'd have a problem with it. But look at that video that came out of Joe Rogan using the N-word. People, that was a compilation of short clips from years ago. And I point that out because nobody had a problem with it then. So why have a problem with it now? Why be all up in arms long after he said it? Why? It is all because it was on a compilation. It was on a compilation, and you got to hear him use the word back to back over and over. They chain linked the snippets. And of course, you hear a white person who say nigger, 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 nigger over and over. It's going to sound a lot worse than hearing him say it once during a 2-hour podcast. But listen, people, this is not a joke. While I don't like when black people get over emotional when a famous white person uses the N-word. I don't like when black people get over emotional when they see it online, when somebody calls them the N-word online. I don't like that. I like to see black people with thick skin who don't even respond to people like that. In my opinion, that's a true sign of security, of confidence. But don't get it twisted. I like for black people to be aware of racists and white supremacists when they see them. Not just black people, all people. Because there's a lot of people who are oblivious to these facts. Now you look at this article, several articles out. Deleted Joe Rogan episode featured guest claiming black people had a genetic proclivity to violence. Now, I was not even aware of this till a couple days ago. And then I went and actually listened to the podcast. Joe Rogan had this far right wing white supremacist on his platform spewing scientific racism. If you don't know what scientific racism is, look it up. Now I'm going to play the audio of what this individual said on Joe Rogan's podcast. And I'll come back with my response.
There's this whole debate about the MAOA gene, which is like this gene that black Africans have, like much. It's like a proclivity to violence that they have.
MAOA gene.
Yeah. I recommend people Google it and do their own research. It's like a big debate about whether or not, but basically like what it is it's, if you think about like, kind of white European, Asian ancestors, as we kind of moved out of Africa, like aggression and violence was kind of less necessary because we were like farmers and stuff.
But
right?
God, is that really true?
There's
Okay, so y'all heard that. Now, first of all, the way he referred to black people, he pretty much told on himself. African, black people. What'd he say?
There's this whole debate about the MAOA gene, which is like this gene that black Africans have.
Black American, black, Africans have. So he's talking about black people all over the planet. All over the planet. He's saying that we have a gene that makes us more prone to violence. Because, what was his reason?
It's like a proclivity to violence that they have.
MAOA gene.
Yeah. I recommend people Google it and do their own research. It's like a big debate about whether or not, but basically like what it is it's, if you think about like, kind of white European, Asian ancestors, as we kind of moved out of Africa, like aggression and violence was kind of less necessary because we were like farmers and stuff.
Excuse me. I have the hiccups. So, now this is supposed to be some type of educated individual. Okay? And there's been professors who've come out and called him out. Dr. Paige Harden, professor of psychology at the University of Texas, Austin, said that he is wrong on basically every level that it's possible to be wrong. Said work on the MAOA gene has now been largely discredited because we now know that human behaviors are not influenced by a single gene with large effects. They are influenced by lots and lots and lots. Think thousands of genetic variants, each of which has a tiny effect. Bottom line, MAOA gene likely doesn't matter for aggression. Okay, so there have been professors who come out and rebuke this individual. Oh, that's scientific racism. And listen, people, that is classic scientific racism, what he spewed. Now, if Joe Rogan was not a white supremacist, if Joe Rogan was not a racist, he would have kicked that dude off of his show as soon as he let that rhetoric out. There is no way a person who is truly not racist would have allowed him to go any further after making that statement. How many of you are familiar with scientific racism? I found out not long ago that a lot of people were not even familiar with what it was, and that's sad. Very sad. Now, let me share my screen here. You can Google scientific racism and do your own research. It's an actual term. It's not something that I've sat here and made up on a live stream. Okay, and there's a lot of contributors over the decades, contributors to scientific racism. Okay, a a lot of these people, a lot of these individuals, I actually talked about these on a video before. A lot of them had this narrative or pushed this narrative that, hey, look at the skulls. Look at the skulls of black people. They're closer to monkeys and apes. So they're actually closer to wild animals, to chimpanzees. They're not fully developed humans. This is the narrative of scientific racism. You know, they're more like monkeys. Look at the skull. And of course, scientific racism sort of dwindled out of the picture. But this narrative of scientific racism became popular during slavery, during Jim Crow, during an extremely racist period in history. Why did they come up with these theories? Here, look. They came up with scientific racism because they wanted to justify the enslavement and mistreatment of black people. They wanted to remove the guilt from white people's heart and mind. That, hey, don't worry about what we do to these people or how we treat these people, because they're not really human. They're not truly human. That was the narrative behind scientific racism. That black people are not fully human, so why would you care? They're no more human than cattle, than sheep and goats. And what this individual said on Joe Rogan's podcast falls right in line with scientific racism. So yes, Joe, and there's more evidence that Joe Rogan is a bona fide white supremacist. Now, let me go back to my screen here. And I highly recommend, here, let me post a link to this in the chat room. If you get time, I advise you check that out. There's a lot of good information here. Okay, what's going on with my live stream here? Lord. Lot of good information there. So he had this individual on his show, on his program, spewing scientific racism, racist rhetoric, and Joe Rogan was not offended, not one bit. This is another article on that individual who was on Joe Rogan's podcast. Activists who met with congressmen about DNA posted about black violence gene. Black violence gene. And you know what's interesting? There is a book that I've talked about several times. And it talks about this, actually. It talks about, different groups who are more prone to violence and stuff like that. And I highly recommend people get this book. I'm going to share it now. This book is called The Iceman Inheritance, is the title. Subtitle: Prehistoric Sources of Western Man's Racism, Sexism, and Aggression. And this book was written by a white man. He does not talk about a gene that made whites violent, as a whole. I'm not saying all whites have always been violent. Absolutely not. He talks about the environment of Europe that made them more violent. And it's interesting because that's the same thing that this guy said. He said they migrated out of Africa and became farmers, so aggression was not as important, which is not true. There was more farming and farmers in Africa. Once they migrated to Europe, now you can only grow crops a certain time of the year. You're in a very cold environment. Food was more plentiful in Africa than Europe. So that environment, and this is what this man talks about in his book, Michael Bradley, that environment in Europe is what contributed to the increased aggression, because now you have less food, and this is where only the strongest survive came from, that narrative. The narrative of the strong take from the weak, only the strong survive. It is because they will quite often attack other Europeans and take what they have. It was a very rough moment in time for them. So, you had to be very protective of things that you own, that you were in possession of, whether it be food, water, crops, whatever. And if you get low on those things, and the climate is such where you can't grow your own, but yet you see some people who grew or have possession of food, you're going to beat them up. You're going to whack them over the head with a billy club and take their food. The environment, the harsh environment of Europe contributed to the increased aggression. So by the time they went around the globe, they continue with that same behavior that was given birth to in the cold, harsh environment of Europe. What did they do? They would attack people and take what belonged to them, take their belongings. It was like they couldn't even have a civil relationship with the non-European groups that they encountered across the world. It was always a plan to overthrow those people, to take those people's lands, to take those people's resources. And this is my thing. Like I said, I'm willing to debate any of these scientific racists. Let me see. Global. Let's see if I can. Okay, yeah, let me share this. Let me share something else with you. Now, I want y'all to take a look at this. You look at this map, and you see that, and listen, this is no disrespect. I value everybody who values me. This is no disrespect. I criticize all people for their stupidity, 100%, because we need to eradicate stupidity and ignorance, evil from this planet. You look at this map and you see that Europeans colonized every part of the globe. But when you look at European countries, nobody, I repeat, nobody, no non-European country has ever colonized any European country. All of Europe has enslaved and colonized every country in Africa, Asia, all across the planet. This is the behavior. This is group behavior. And it changed the world. It ushered violence into parts of the world where they were not violent. And like I said, that was one of the reasons it was so easy for Europeans to take control over so many people's land and to conquer them. It is because that is what they were doing in Europe, where these people in other parts of the world, they had plenty of food. They had more than enough food. And they were not violent like that. You might have your little dust-ups here and there, but the idea of having armies of people fighting armies of other people, groups fighting against other groups, and you're killing them, your goal is to kill. War in general, that was not going on in other parts of the world. There was no need to, because resources were not scarce. When you look at Europe, it is totally funded by the resources that they are extracting from other countries, non-European countries. And it is a whole boatload of resources. And, you know, I commend any and everybody who points this out. It's hard to argue that it is black people who have a gene for violence, when really black people are very reluctant to turn to violence. Look at how long Jim Crow went on before black people had any significant uprisings of the civil rights era. Look at how long they sort of tolerated it and went along with it. You know, black people tend to let things go on for a very long time before they snap. So if there is a gene in black people, I don't believe there is, that makes them more prone to violence, it is a very weak gene. Now, of course, I don't believe there's a gene at all. But look, if you're dumb enough to bring a racist like this on your platform and allow them to spew scientific racism, buddy, you yourself are a white supremacist racist. The only difference with Joe Rogan is that he's an intellectual. Somewhat, I will say somewhat. And he is not, he's not overtly racist. Do y'all really believe that Joe Rogan believes that all races of people have the exact same level of natural intelligence? Who believes that? I mean, it's pretty much guaranteed that Joe Rogan he also said something else. He said that the ultimate human being would be a person with the body of a black man and the brain of a white man. How many people remember he said that? Let me see if I can pull it up. Oh, buddy. Joe Rogan said black people have a different brain. He said black people have a different brain. Huh? Man, these people are pulling up all kinds of old videos on Joe Rogan, man. This is pretty crazy. This article was written 5 days ago. And the only reason they put this out here, a lot of these, they're putting out a lot of old stuff that he had. Let me see if I can get it to play here. Now, he also said, like I said, that the ultimate human being will be a human being who had a black man's body and the brain of a white man. Hold up, let's see here.
I'm making this video to talk about the most regretful and
okay, that's not it. Here, let me share my screen with y'all. You can see what I'm talking about. Okay. Joe Rogan claimed black people have a different brain. Here's what he actually said. You get the body of a black man, then you get the mind of a white man, all together in some strange combination. Boy, boy, boy. Man. So, how can you explain that away? Now, you know, I don't know about that. Man, Joe Rogan, he's in a pickle. Wait a minute. I want to get the actual quote. This is another article about it. And it's funny, these articles have been created just days ago. This one 5 days ago. Okay, here's the video here. Let's listen to it together.
And he says, okay, take me to this one. And the guy goes, okay. He goes, is that in a good neighborhood? He's like, oh, yeah. The guy barely speaks English. He takes us there. We get out, and we're giggling. Oh, we're going to see Planet of the Apes. We walk into Planet of the Apes. We walked into Africa, dude. We walked in the door, and there was no white people.
Okay, that's not it. That's not it. This is the one. That was his Planet of the Apes thing. This is the one. Let's listen to it.
What are you? Dad's black, mom's white. Standard issue, pretty much.
Powerful combination genetic-wise, right? You get the body of the black man, and then you get the mind of the white man all together in some strange combination. That doesn't, by the way, mean that black people don't have brains. It's a different brain. Don't get me.
Wow. Huh? He said that does not mean that black people don't have brains. Their brains are just not as efficient as the brain of a white man. Isn't that what Joe Rogan basically implied? Is it or is it not? Am I misquoting him? Y'all heard that. All right? Let me take the echo out.
What are you?
Dad's black, mom's white. Standard issue, pretty much.
Powerful combination genetic-wise, right? You get the body of the black man, and then you get the mind of the white man all together in some strange combination. That doesn't, by the way, mean that black people don't have brains.
Wow. Now you add that onto the Planet of the Apes narrative. You add that onto these guests that he's had on his show, talking about black people have a gene that makes them more violent. You put all that together. Can you really, with confidence, say that Joe Rogan is not a racist, is not a white supremacist? Can you honestly say that Joe Rogan does not believe that whites are intellectually superior by nature? I'm sure Joe Rogan would agree that there are certain individual blacks who are more intelligent than certain white individuals. Exceptions, not the rules. But overall, it's clear that Joe Rogan believes that whites naturally have greater intelligence than blacks, particularly. So let's stop kidding ourselves here, people. And this is for everybody out there. I don't care if you're black, white, Asian, Hispanic. This is for everybody out there who is saying that Joe Rogan is not a racist. Let's not live in fantasy world here, people. Let's be able to identify a racist when we hear one. Now, you look, I believe racists are the greatest threat to human life on earth. Far more people have died in the name of race than for any other reason. I mean, millions. I mean, in the Congo, many of you are familiar with the slaughtering of people in the Congo, millions of people. Millions of black people all over the earth. There have been entire groups of black people driven into extinction. Complete extinction. All because of what they are. So when I find out that a person is racist, I have no respect for them. You know, they basically tell on themselves and reveal their lack of character, their lack of intelligence. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I know a few other people feel the same way. But I truly, genuinely look down on people who are racist. I don't get up in arms about it. You know, I don't want to see them as a champion, most definitely. I don't want to see no racist holding the belt. Yes, it felt good when Colby Covington got beaten up by Kamaru Usman in the first fight. Yeah, I took pleasure in that. These people are definitely a problem, the biggest problem out there. But I'm not fooled by, you know, him bringing on Mike Tyson on the show. He had Israel Adesanya on the show. You know, oh, he's got a black guy on his show. He couldn't be racist. Oh, my goodness. Being racist is all about how you think. And having what you think manifest in reality to the point where it harms other people and prevents other people from flourishing. And this feeling of race superiority, that is the root of race. Now, you can feel that your race is superior all you want. I don't mind that. It does not bother me when a Mexican believes that Mexicans are the most intelligent race. It doesn't bother me when whites believe that whites are the most intelligent race. And I don't think that belief is harmful. I'm not against people believing that. I only have a problem with it when you start to have an effect on other people's life, on other people's growth. I have a problem with it when you deny those people who are not white the right to own land, the right to own a business, to buy property. When you deny them these types of rights, when you're in a position to deny them these types of rights, you're exercising racism. When you overlook or dismiss black applicants for a job, and instead you hire the white applicant who is not as qualified, that's the type of racism I have a problem with. The refusal to grant black people 40 acres and a mule is racism. 40 acres, and I still want my 40 acres and a mule. For several decades, black people's ability to grow business-wise, economically, was thwarted all throughout slavery and they continued after slavery with black code laws. Many people don't know about black code laws. If you could, let me see. Can y'all still see my screen? Yeah. You can Google or do your research on black code laws. These laws were put in place before Jim Crow. This is racism. And this made it illegal for blacks to own property. You know, economically, it hurt black people. Generation after generation after generation. And then after all that, they want to look at black people as a whole and say, well, why can't you get ahead? What's wrong with you? Yeah. Why can't you pull yourself up by your bootstraps? That's racism in full bloom. But me knowing that Joe Rogan is a racist, you know, it's not, I'm not going to watch the UFC and get angry because he's talking. I genuinely don't care. You know, as long as he talks about what's going on in the fight, Joe Rogan, I can listen to him commentate. I don't have no problem with that. Even though I know he's a racist, as long as he's sticking with the content, I can listen. Like I said, I read most of Mein Kampf. I've read literature from hell. I've been invited to white separatists' platforms. I've been able to get to actually speak, but I'd go on there because white separatists, white nationalists, I agree with much of their beliefs about how different races should have their own land because they're very different at different cultures, and it does not benefit groups to throw away their cultures and identity and stuff like that. To me, there's a lot of truth to that. There's a lot of truth to that. And for the stability of the country, at least, to eradicate violence, racial tension, and things like that, it is more beneficial for the races to be separated. But when you have an integrated society, you know, whoever has the most power, they're going to exercise it so that the subordinate groups don't catch up to them. The idea is to remain as the dominant group. So they're going to exercise racism against those people. Now, like I said, they're going to be white people who are not racist, who are against, but they have no power. For whatever reason, somehow, it's the racists who have the power. They have the power in this world. Not the whites who are not racist, because being racist helped them to acquire land, resources, knowledge, a whole lot of knowledge. Many of the inventions that we enjoy today that were created during slavery was created by the slaves, by black people. And their slave masters simply took credit for the inventions. Right? So don't get it twisted. Most definitely, don't be confused. Joe Rogan is a white supremacist. He is a racist. However, I'm not up in arms about it. I'm not enraged about it. You know, I've been hearing racists talk all my life. I don't care what people think about me. The only thing I care about is how I think about myself, how I view black people, That's the only thing that's important to me. And I'm just being honest with you. What really upsets me is to see black people who truly believe that they are inferior. That is when I am a disturbed, bothered person. It disturbs me to run into black people who believe that they belong at the bottom of the ladder. When I run into black people who don't believe that they're smart enough to be a doctor, to be a lawyer, to be a president, to be a politician. There are many black people who don't feel like they're intelligent enough. And in general, they don't believe the vast majority of black people are intelligent enough to do things like that. That is when I seriously have a problem with it. But Joe Rogan, I don't believe Joe Rogan I don't believe he makes black people feel less intelligent or inferior. Even with his white supremacist rhetoric, right? Now, I know some people may have heard that podcast. I haven't heard the whole thing. Now, look, maybe he says some things that where he tried to sort of make up for it, or maybe he sort of tried to disagree with that guy on his platform. I don't know. But let me tell you, if you're truly not a racist, you don't bring people like that on your platform. You don't give them your platform. He gave this man his platform. And listen, that guy was surrounded by controversy before he got on Joe Rogan's podcast. He was already surrounded by controversy. Let me switch my screen. So for Joe Rogan to pull him onto his show, and look, there are plenty of people going at him about this. This is a white dude on Twitter. Listen, when I went on Twitter to see the comments in response, white people are going in on this man. There are white people calling this out, pointing out that it's scientific racism. A lot of people don't understand that there is a massive group of white people out here in the world who go in on white racists harder than a lot of black people. Because they're educated on the subject. They've researched scientific racism and all of that. They've researched the history so they can identify a white person who is racist, and they will call you out with the quickness. And it's not just liberals or whatever. Many of them, they don't even belong to any of these political groups. These are just white people with a good heart, right? And they see the wickedness, the evil in racism, and they want to call it out. They are going in on this dude. So black people, this is what I have a problem with. People who may listen to a podcast like this and actually believe it. Like, maybe we do got a gene that makes us more violent. Maybe we are closer to the chimpanzees than other groups. And that's the Charles Darwin theory. And Rogan is a big fan of Charles Darwin. And that Darwin theory is totally racist, man. Totally racist. Darwin was a big influence on Adolf Hitler, if I'm not mistaken. Hitler took some of his ideologies and adopted them. This idea that black people have barely evolved from the ape stage, and that they're like one step away from being apes, whereas Asians and whites primarily have fully and completely evolved into a bona fide human beings. That is dangerous type of rhetoric. That is very dangerous. That will produce a population of white people who have no shame or guilt in exercising racism. Why should I care? These people are not truly human anyways. If you can get people to truly see other humans as not being truly human, they'll be willing to treat them in the worst way imaginable. That's what I have a serious problem with. No, we do not have a gene that makes us violent. White people do not have a gene that makes them violent. The Irish in the United States did not have a gene that made them violent. You heard of the Fighting Irish? They earned that title by being violent. Hell, they used to shoot cops on sight, the Irish here in the United States. The Irish made up the majority of the prison population at one point here in the United States. Late 1800s, so forth. Irish would move into the community and black people would move out. But they didn't have a gene for violence. The only thing different groups of people have is experiences. And your group experience can dictate the average person's proclivity to violence. And that is not genetic in any way. Right? So I just wanted to scream and clarify myself on that. I had some people reach out to me. What are you talking about? You taking up for Joe Rogan? Stop. Look, I'm just at a point in my life where I can't concern myself too much with. See, with Rose Namajunas, let's talk about Rose. Rose, that was a unique situation for me. You got to understand, I always looked at Rose as a white chick who grew up around a bunch of black folks. And that is what Rose said. She said she grew up around a lot of black people. She grew up in a black community. And that's how she got her nickname Thug. She said that a lot of people would underestimate her and think that she was a punk just because she was a white chick. Right? It's part of the reason why she took up martial arts. She's like, yeah, I had to let people know that I wasn't no punk. So I'm like, okay, there's always white people in black communities that's down, everybody knows them. Those type of white people are all over every black community in the United States. So I thought Rose was just one of those types. Like, okay, this is just a white chick who got some black roots. So when I heard her spewing bona fide white supremacist rhetoric that you only pretty much hear when you're in one of those organizations. I'm talking about these people have official organizations where you have rules, you have doctrine, you have to do certain things in order to be in the group, do certain things in order to move up in the group. Some of those things involve carrying out violence against black people. Some involve actually killing black people. There are groups like that. Here in the United States, white supremacist group like that. And I can tell you for a fact, there are no black groups that require you to harm white people in order to be in the group. There's no black group who's going to reward you if you murder white people. Those types of white supremacist groups, those groups of white supremacists are sick. And guess what? They focus on joining police departments. They flood police departments like you cannot imagine. Like I said, that guy who infiltrated the police department in Florida, he said it himself. He said these cops, these police departments are flooded with white supremacists. And here, Rose in Florida. Florida is the white supremacist capital of the United States by far. Here's Rose, who's about to fight in Florida, in the buildup, spewing code language. I shared that article with y'all where the police officer himself said that better dead than red is white supremacist code language. That's what the police officer said. So it was shocking almost, because I didn't expect anything like that from Rose. You know, it wasn't a little controversial. It was very controversial. Right? So that was a lot different. To be honest, when I first saw that video, I could not believe what I heard. I couldn't believe what I seen. I'm like, what? If there was anybody who's going to use that type of rhetoric, Rose would have been the last one I'd suspect to do that. And then after it was brought to her attention, like, hey, Rose, you're using bona fide white supremacist language. She didn't care. Like, hey, Rose, a lot of your fans are offended. She didn't care. And that showed me that she was genuinely a heartless individual who tries to project an image of having the biggest heart for humanity on earth. That I took great offense to. And I am all about getting rid of evil on this planet. I'm big on that. And, you know, Joe Rogan contributes. With rhetoric like that, when you bring people on your platform like that, buddy, you are making a huge contribution to evil. Huge. Certain white people, some of them who may even have power, they may not have heard rhetoric like this. And after listening to Joe Rogan, some of them might say, well, I guess it's not so bad to view blacks as inferior. It's not so bad to treat them like they're inferior, to deny them this, to deny them that. So now I can do it. I can deny black people things and not feel guilty about it. Once you can remove people's guilt of mistreating other people, that's exactly what they did during slavery. They taught white people that God wanted blacks to be enslaved. They taught them that God cursed black people to be slaves. This is what they taught in churches here in the United States. Why did they teach the white population that? To remove the guilt. And so that those whites would not object to their treatment of the black population. So I still have confidence in this country. We are not far removed from slavery, from a very racist point in this country. And we are still working towards eradicating the evil, sick, demonic spirit that was cultivated over many generations in this country. And I believe that pointing out true racism when you see it, is a huge part of eradicating this sick, evil spirit from our population. I don't want anybody black or white, to believe that they are inferior to any other group of people on this planet. Because when you truly believe that you're inferior, you're going to have it. It's going to be easy for you to do sick, evil things. Why not? I'm a degenerate anyways. These are the types of things I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to harm people. I'm supposed to be inconsiderate of other people's lives. After all, I'm inferior. No, like I said, it's healthy for people to have a high view of themselves and their race. It's a thin line. Look, I'm not against white people who believe that they're truly more intelligent than other races of the planet. I'm not against that. I would rather you believe that, because if you truly believe that, then prove it. Because if you truly believe that, you should behave in a more civilized manner. You should always be striving to set an example of what a developed, evolved, civilized person is. That belief can make you a better citizen, a better human being. But when you seek to hurt other groups because of that belief, that is when it works against you. And that is when you yourself are acting out subhuman, primitive behaviors. And you're the exact opposite of what you think you are. Right? So that is my rant. Regardless of your race, I hope you think highly of yourself. There is a book I read many, many years ago called The ISIS Papers by Frances Cress Welsing. And she wrote in that book that the first thing white people need to do, white people who are racist, she said the first thing that racists need to do is love themselves. Love themselves. Because when you truly love yourself, you are not motivated to harm, hurt, belittle, or degrade other people. You want other people to live a healthy life just like you. So those are my thoughts. WMMA Addict, what do you think?